everyone, welcome to our class in a box. I'm Olivia Graham and I teach fine art, and every week I show you how to complete a new project with a different medium. So this week I'm going to show you how to use your gouache paint to create this lighthouse. So as you can see, it's got lots of washes, it's very diluted, so we're going to use the paint, the gouache, as if it was watercolours. So if you've never done our tutorials, there is a warm-up tutorial before you can try out the gouache to see how it works and to find little tips on how to layer the colours, how to dilute, and different ways to use this medium. If not, then you can start straight on with our tutorial today, and I will be there to accompany you all along the different steps. The lighthouse, although it's a gouache painting, it's very much been done in the style of watercolours. For this project we'll need white, yellow ochre, 2 reds, 2 blues, the purple, burnt sienna and the black. You also need your 2 brushes, some kitchen paper and some clean water, and a palette or a plate or something to put your paints in. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the sky, and we're going to do a wet wash. We're going to wet our paper and apply our colour, and everybody will get a different result because it'll depend on how much paint will be on your brush and how the water will react with the paint on the paper. Second step, we'll do the red part of the lighthouse, then we'll add the top, and then we'll work our way down adding shadows. And then on the base of the lighthouse, it'll be a bit more of an abstract kind of painting. And then we'll just finish with the sea, the water. So first thing we're going to do is trace our outline. So I've got a coloured pencil today. I've put my graphite paper on my watercolour paper. Remember, don't press too hard because it will transfer and you'll have some sort of smudges all around. Right, I'm just removing some of the smudging in the background here. Yes, that happens. So before you start, you need a spare piece of paper. So your cartridge paper, which is the thin one, the thin paper is useful. So just have it to hand because we're going to need to do a lot of practice for this one. So it's not very complicated. It's pretty straightforward. The effort will be in the background, but as I say, everybody's result is going to be very different, and it's really quite fun. You just wet the background. So we're going to do a little trial on our practice paper, and for that you need to put on your palette some purple, like so. I did a little trial earlier. Some purple, some black here, and some I've taken the phthalo blue, which is the sort of the more intense darker blue of the 2 blues you've got in your boxes. So with your flat brush you're going to do a little mix here. So we're going to dilute them, and for this step we're going to do very diluted washes. So as opposed to the teacups where we did really opaque layers, this time we're doing the opposite. We're really going watery. So what I'm trying to achieve here is a dark, sort of a dark blue, moody colour, really. That's why I put some purple in there. I mean, we could even add a bit of burnt sienna, to be honest. And that's okay, you've got them in your box. So just have a tiny bit. So we're trying to get this mix that's a bit moody in the background. And what's going to happen is, if you put some water on your paper, so we'll do the practice on here. If you put some water like this, and got some rubber on there, here you go. And then we grab our mix, and then we're just going to let it react on the paper. So if you drag your mix on top of the wet paper, it will just sort of react and position itself whichever way the paper goes. Another way you could do it is if you wet the paper like this, and then grab your diluted wash and apply it at the top, and then sort of let it run down. And if you can see, so then it's just quite fun. You could also paint like this, basically let it go run down from the top, which I think is partly what I've done. So, and let it seep down. So that's quite, there you are, it gives a nice sort of spreading of the colour. So we're going to make a rather large mix here because we need to cover all the background, and we'll be able to add back to it as we paint. So the first thing is mix your colour on your palette. It's quite dark, that. If I use this is quite a dark colour. So I'm going to dilute it a bit more. So the reason I've got a big plate here is because you can sort of spread yourself and thin down the colours. So I quite like that. So that's gone more blue. I'm going to add a little bit of red, of the burnt sienna. Sorry, not red. Yeah, it is red, but it's more brown. Still quite dark. So I'm just going to play around. So if I do my test again, I just put water on the paper. Quite a lot of water, it's quite wet. And then I go and grab my mix and see if I'm happy with it. So I'm happy with that, I think. So I'm going to use this mix. If you find it's too dark, we just add some water and sort of thin it down across the background, okay? So I think we're probably ready to start. Well, I'm ready to start. So take your time, work your mix, practice on the paper, and see if you're happy, and just sort of run your brush. If you're happy with the color, obviously the print here gives quite a purpley color, so you could. I'll show you the original. It's not quite as purple actually. It's more grey. You see. More grey than the print you've got. So just bear in mind, it doesn't have to be exactly like this. Mine was a lot more toned down. So I'll put that way. So yeah, we just dilute it as we go on the paper. You just keep on adding water and keep all the way across, so you don't have to worry about it being too dark. And then if you want to add darker areas, you just sort of drop some darker mix just in some areas, and you could just practice on your cartridge paper until you feel comfortable, and then move on to your original. So I'm ready. I'm going to put some water all across the paper, all around this lighthouse, and I'm going to paint it with my wash. So one of the things to bear in mind is to work relatively quickly, because there's a lot of surface to cover. If you've got a bigger brush, that's fine too. And then just work across and just make sure your paper is nice and wet all over. If you've got the heating on, you might find that your paper will dry quickly. So although I'm not suggesting to open all the windows and keep it cold, I'm just saying if it's quite hot, you might find that your paint dries. So I'm just going to be quite generous. I'm not I'm really going around this lighthouse, so wherever your paper is wet is where the paint is going to really seep in and go. Okay, now you can see the paper, because it's now we're wetting the paper, it's starting to buckle a little bit, but that's fine. If you've secured your paper on your work surface, you won't have that problem. Right, so we've got, there we are, we've got our sky, which is wet, and now I'm just going to start painting in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I'm going to apply the paint and let it make its way down. Now, you see. Oh, I forgot to wet this area here. That's not very wet. There you are. So I'm running my brush quite flat across the horizon. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop some darker, some darker areas like that. And just let it be, you know, doesn't have to be super perfect. It's just got to be, it's got to look as natural as possible. There you are. So I'm going to let this dry now. And then we're going to work on our red. So make sure you're happy with your mix. So that's step one. So now we can work on our palette. We can start putting some red because we're going to move on to step two. Here we go. Step two, where we mix both reds. So we're going to use crimson red and vermilion. And crimson is quite pink and vermilion is it's more orange. And we're going to do a combination of those two, and we're going to paint the upper part of our lighthouse. We're going to make it darker on one side, and then we're slowly going to dilute it on the other side. So again, we're going to do a practice on here before we move on to the final piece. So I'm going to grab my thin brush this time, the round brush, and once again we're going to do relatively diluted. So wet your brush and mix your two paints on the paper, and you can see already it's a lovely color combination. So it's relatively diluted. So if you did play with it on your spare cartridge paper, you'd see that you can get a nice transparency, and we want it relatively a little bit darker on this side and more transparent on this side. So what we can do is start in the darker zone, and we're going to add water as we go across. There we are. So I don't know if you can, I'm trying to see. See here, this is quite pink and this is a little bit more orangey, so I've added a little bit more vermilion. And it's up to you, you know, what colour you go for. So I'm going to go like this. I'm going to grab my mix and I'm just going to paint in this area here. So make sure you don't go overboard on the blue because you don't want the sky to become red. There we are. So painting in this area. And now we're going to add some water to our brush. And we're going to drag and sort of slowly dilute our paint to the right. So we're just going to go around those windows. There we are, and add some water. Now I'm just going to dry my brush, and now I'm just going to tiny bit of just clean water, and I'm going to dilute this. There you are. You see the paint is seeping into the right, like this. Like that. So we've got a darker side, and as you can see, all I've done is I've run my wet brush on the right hand side. I could just wipe off some paint if you felt it was too dark. Okay, so just to give this sort of curved aspect. And I'm just going to stop here, let it dry, and we're going to move on to step 3, where we're going to, because we've got this red mix here, and we're going to paint in the little red part at the top where the light is in the lighthouse. Okay, so continue with this mix, but you can do this because it's dry on the top there. Right, so I'm just going to start painting in this bit. So I think we can stop the top bit there, and what we're going to do is we're going to grab, whilst we're still with the red and we've got our brush in the right colour, we're just going to dilute as much paint as we can, dab our brush, we don't want too much water, and we're just going to paint in the little windows in a very diluted wash. Obviously we're going to cover the middle with some dark grey, but just to get the white areas covered. And we're going to leave these two, they are not red. So we're going to now do the grey mix here. So we're going to use the same colours as we used for the sky. We're just going to add some white. Here you go. So just a bit of white, and we're going to make a more opaque kind of grey. So it's going to have a bit of dual tones. I'll just show you on the original, it's easier. We can see it's got some darker grey, so a bit more blue, and some lighter colours. We'll ignore the yellow ochre, that'll come at the end. And so we're going to apply this all over and in here. This is kind of the little window panels here, and that's the top of the tower. Okay, so we're going to use the mix here. As you can see, I'm just reactivating. Some of the paint has dried, but I'm going to use that. And I'm going to add some white, which is going to make it a little bit lighter and opaque as well. So you can see here it's more milky colour. So we're just going to see sort of how it works on our paper. So it's still quite diluted, this. What I might do is just add a little bit more of everything. A little bit more blue, a little bit more purple, a little bit more black, like this. Probably a bit more blue and some white. I'm just trying to, there you go, that's a nice, it's almost like a military grey, you know, the one you see on military ships, or sort of that kind of, there, that kind of grey. So that's quite dark. We're going to apply that on our, how do you call it, on these little sort of architectural, architrave, I don't know what you call them actually, sort of the little bits sticking out. And we're going to add a bit more white to do the middle part and the window. Yeah. Again, you know, preference, personal preference, you decide how dark or how light you want it to be, and just apply it. So I'm going to start with the little panels here, and with I'm using my round brush, just using the end, the pointy end, and I'm just going to fill in the window panels. So making it a little bit more diluted because they are windows, so they're not sort of opaque. There you are. If you feel you've put too much paint on, just brush it off with your brush, like so. You see, it makes it a little bit more transparent, translucent. Here we go, and here. I did say we were going to start with this, and I've started with the windows, and I apologize for the confusing directions. Actually, I decided to start with the windows because I'm working my way down, so there's less risk of me leaning onto this bit whilst I'm doing the top, and it's a bit more logical. I should have mentioned it really. There. There. Okay, so we've got our window panels on the top, and now we're going to create, sort of paint in the top of this tower. So I'm going to go a tiny bit darker, so a dot of each there for those particular bits, for those parts here. So we've created the darker parts, and now I'm going to add some water and make it slightly more diluted, and we're going to fill in the gaps in the middle. So it should appear slightly less dense. Okay, so I'm going to make it a little bit darker on the top here, because this is our dark area, sort of where the shadow is going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit like that. Okay, right, so it's a bit darker here, and what we can do now with the same mix is we can paint in our windows. Just sort of the inside of the window, the glass, and just very delicately paint the frame around. So we've done step 3. There we go. And we're now going to move on to step 4, where we're going to add the shadow on the lighthouse and on the base. And we're going to start building our rock sort of base. And for that, we're going to need blue, purple and black again. And dilute it here, and maybe add more black to the base of the lighthouse. So this is more grey, and this is more like a blue-grey wash. So we'll still have our blue-grey wash here. So all we do is sort of add some water, and sort of keep it relatively light. So I'm just checking on top of my sky how it looks like, and check on top of the red, because that's what we're going to do here. And yeah, good. So I'm good to go. If you want to lighten it a bit, just add a little bit of white there. And we're just going to run our brush sort of at a flat angle, and we're just going to run it all the way down, and then we'll just wash it all around, sort of blend it. So if you start with from the top here, and it's very just straightforward, just run down your brush without going over it too much, because you don't want to peel off, sort of to remove the red from underneath. And we're just working our way down all the way. Obviously it's darker at the bottom because there's the shadow of the rocks. And what we're going to do is grab our brush with, put some water on our brush and sort of blend it. Too much water there, make sure it's not too much, and sort of blend it so the edge is relatively soft. So I've put too much water, so I'm just going to go over it again. Here we go. There. And maybe grab some red, if you've got some red left on your palette, which you should if you're like me, and sort of blend it here so the two colours create a soft edge. Okay, so we've got this side. We're going to go over it again because we've got our line of shadow, so we want it to be sort of covered there. Drag our paint so it goes over, and at the bottom here we're going to add a little bit more black to our mix where we had the blue and the grey, a grey mix. A little bit more black. Actually, I put too much, and now I'm just going to turn around again, dilute it, a bit more blue and a bit of white, a bit of where's my black? No, there, just making more grey colour. There you are. And I'm going to dilute this now with lots of water, so on my brush and on the palette, and I'm going to blend that in on this part of the lighthouse. It's not quite the same. You can see there's more blue on this side and it's a bit more sort of grey on this side. I'm going to add some water and literally just blend in all around the window and blend in up here like that, making sure I'm covering the surface. Here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to let this dry, and whilst this part is drying we're going to work on our rocks on the bottom. So for that I'm going to use the flat brush, and we're going to continue with our, really sticking to our mix here. So it needs to be a little bit more blue now, just sort of a darker blue, and we're just going to work on the dark area. So we're going to do all this here, this bit here, here, and sort of the blue areas. We'll finish with the yellow ochre and the burnt sienna. So, so let's just add a bit more to our mix. Purple and some black. So if it's too dark, you just grab some of it and then move away, and then sort of work a tone down. So we've gone it's quite black here, so we're going a tone down, so we're adding some blue. And then if you check the color with a bit of water, I think we should be there somewhere. So that's quite a nice sort of dark blue purple, but with higher undertones of blue, really, and overtones there. And I'm going to play around with these two colors to sort of build my dark areas. Right, so if you look on your handout, your instructions, we're working sort of in a flat, apply the paint in a flat way, sort of in a bit of an abstract way. It doesn't have to be curved and round. We're trying to make it sort of sharp and a bit modern. So yeah, apply your brush in a flat way, and drag your paint one way, and then sort of build your rock. So do a little bit of practice on your spare paper, how to use your brush, applying your paint in a flat way like this. And once you kind of see if you're happy how to use your brush and how to apply your paint, you can always reload it, sort of drop some paint on it, you know, to add some density to the color, and you're ready to go. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to go left to right, obviously, because I'm right-handed. Sorry, I'm just doing a bit more of a mix here because I've used a lot on here. And I'm just keen to have a darker mix here, and a lighter mix, so I can sort of play with the two colors. Sort of go from here, so I'm going to go one brush stroke like this, one long one here, and then sort of maybe down, and then add some blue maybe to the top here, and then maybe grab your brush with water and then sort of do little strokes like this and work my way across the different areas that I've chosen to make that color basically. Got some here, and then sort of along the lighthouse here on the top. So you see, I keep on adding here to my mix on the palette. So I think that needs to go dark on the top there. And then what else do we have? We've got a little bit here, this one here, I have a feeling is quite blue. Oops, too much blue. There we are, that's quite blue. Add a bit of black. Just looking on here. So you can see it's quite blue at the bottom here, so we're just going to do those here like that. Here we go. Right, I'm going to grab my brush, add some water, and sort of drag my too much water there. Drag my colours down a bit. Add a bit of blue, and then I'm going to add a bit of black in my first mix to make it more grey. Go back to this original grey, and we're going to use that in this area here, a bit more black. Right, there you are. And a bit here as well. So really trying to go along those lines of the rockery, sort of, because they are like big boulders that have been plumbed there to carry this lighthouse. So they have some sort of sharp, straight edges and some more disorganized. And you can add a bit of purple if you want to your mix. And down here, obviously that bottom here is going to be the sea, so we're leaving that for now, and maybe we can just sort of add some sort of brush strokes going down. And I'm going to reload here this darker area. It doesn't have to be as dark as this, but I'm just sort of making sure that there is like a difference. Right, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this mix a little bit more diluted, and just paint the base of the lighthouse, just to go into the lighthouse basically. Here you go. Right, bit of blue for here. And I'm going to back over here with some blue. Okay, so I think we're going to leave that now, and this is dry, so we could now paint on sort of this darker area which is towards the base of the lighthouse, and it's because the lighthouse sits on a more sort of slightly wider base here, and we need to mark it here with our colour. So I'm going to use my other brush, and the pointy one, add a bit of black, maybe mix some black, some white and some blue, a bit more black, put too much white there, and sort of recreate what we had up here. Yeah, so although it looks quite pale on here, when you apply it on paper, it's not that pale. So I'm going to use that a bit diluted, and I'm going to paint here. With the very end of my brush, I'm just marking the top bit here. Here we go. Right. I'm blending this in. Yeah. Okay, so now we need to leave this to dry for a little while, because we can't paint over it with our yellow ochre and our burnt sienna, otherwise it will completely blend in. We are now moving on to the part where we're adding all the lovely rockery, sort of the yellow ochre and the burnt sienna to the base here, to the rocks, and a little bit details also in the tower, in the top of the tower. And then we'll finish step 6 with the ocean, the sea. So for the step 5 now, we are going to need on our palette. So as you can see, I've changed it, I've cleaned it a little bit. I've got some fresh water here as well, just sort of to start afresh. So I'm going to add some yellow ochre. Here we go, and some burnt sienna for this. And obviously we're going to still use our black and our blue as well a little bit afterwards, so that's just useful to keep there. And we're going to use the yellow ochre in the same manner as we did with the blue rocks. So just with our flat brush, make sure everything is nearby. There we are. So we're going to do several mixes with several degrees of color hue. So we're going to have one that's more yellow, one that's more reddish brown, so a bit more, and we're going to sort of play with those. So pick our colors from each of them, and maybe one even with a bit of black, so we're a little bit sort of in a darker. So we've got three tones of this mix, and we're going to start with once again left to right, and I'm going to start with sort of the red ones, the more red mix. So it's this one, making sure I've got a clean brush. There we are. So a bit more red there, like this. So still using our cartridge paper, so we can sort of do a bit of practice, check our color. We can have it more opaque, or you can have it more diluted. There we are. And then just dip in and add a little bit of ochre if you want to tone it down, or just add water if you want it more diluted, like this. So it's again question of personal preference. So I'm going to go somewhere between the more ochre and the red, and I'm going to start out here and just applying them in the same manner as I did earlier. So just go down like this, grab a bit, I'm going to add a little bit of yellow ochre on my brush for the top bit here, and I'm going slightly over the blue as well. Grab a bit of red sienna, maybe just to do some sort of to mark the edges of the borders. Here we go, like here. And my mix there, and then continue sort of working your way, and again sort of in a abstract kind of way. So you just sort of evolve between those three colors. So there, I'm going to grab a bit of darker ochre and the darker mix, sort of here in the middle. Add a bit of water. Obviously you've got your tracings from the outline, so you can follow these sort of to mark the edges. Grab a bit of water with the yellow ochre, so make that one a little bit diluted, and sort of add it on top here, and just the yellow on its own. And we're going to grab some yellow ochre, just unmixed, and we're going to work our way sort of up the base of the lighthouse. So it's all, you know, it's all very simple, and it's relatively quick. You know, there isn't a great deal of technique. It's just sort of applying sort of small washes of the mixes you've made, and sort of applying them in an aesthetic way to create a three-dimensional effect, to make those borders appear like they're standing away from one another. They're standing up from the sea, and they're holding this lighthouse basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bit of water, and here where I've applied my yellow ochre, I'm just going to try to blend it in now, just with water on my brush, so there isn't a really sharp edge. And yeah, right, a bit more darker mix. So the one with the, oops, too much black here. This here with the red and a bit of black, and I'm going to add a bit more there and there. You can add a bit of blue as well if you want to the mix, just to give it some, again, a different slight hue, and it makes the brown more interesting. So we can use that and just use it on the base here maybe. There. Where else do we need to go? Sort of like this. So I'm going a little bit over the blue as well. I'm quite happy. So now what I'm going to do is, with my round brush, I'm just going to apply a little bit of detail on the top. It's a bit, almost like a bit of rustiness to the top of the tower there. So I'm going to go over my darker line and sort of place the yellow ochre. So you might want to make it a little bit more opaque rather than the diluted version I've got here. Make it a bit more opaque and sort of loosely run it towards the top there. And so there we are. It's got to be light. You don't want to cover it. You don't have to cover all the areas. You can leave some of it white. What you could do is grab your flat brush and do a little mix. I can see here of sort of the black and the blue. Here we go. And perhaps just highlight some of those little areas I did on the rocks there, sort of like this. Right, so we're going to let this dry, and we're going to move on to the sea now. So if you're like me and quite messy, you might want to change your palette, and we're going to use for the sea now, we are going to use the last blue, which is the cerulean blue. So it's a slightly different hue to the phthalo blue, which we use in the background, which is brighter, and we're going to mix that. If I'm not sure, do we need to dilute it? Let's do a little test, right? Have a think, because I did this ages ago. So grab our paint. Let's see. No, I think that's fine. We're just going to use this blue on its own. So we're going to use cerulean blue, which is lovely. It's really nice, bright blue color. So, and for the sea, I think we're going to, the way I've used it here is sort of this diluted way. It's not opaque, like we did the teacups, very, very dark, and it's not completely diluted, like so, like very diluted. So it's somewhere in the middle, and the best way to describe it is we start darker at the back and we sort of make it light as we come towards the front. Okay. So grab your paint, your brush, your flat brush, and some paint on it, and we're going to paint along the horizon like that, and maybe reload it, make sure it's nice and dark, and sort of work our way towards the front of the picture. It's lovely. It's a really nice contrast and complements each other, those two colors. They work really, really well. So quite dark again, and I'm going to now run my brush into the foreground with some water. Now I'm just going to slowly add water, and it's going to be a little bit, you can see it's more diluted now. So I'm trying to do a horizontal wash. whilst it's still wet, we're going to add the reflection of the lighthouse in the water. And for that, just like here, so all I've done is with my flat brush, I've grabbed some of that yellow ochre mix that we had earlier and very diluted, and I've done the same with a mix of the two reds. So, and I've just gone sort of a little bit, not randomly, but sort of, I've placed it just below the lighthouse, and obviously where it joins the rocks, I've made it a little bit more red sienna, burnt sienna, so it kind of reflects the reflection in the water. And so I'm going to grab a little bit of that red mix. Okay. Oh, it's quite bright there. That's quite pink. Here we go. That's it. That's better. And quite diluted. So I'm just checking. It's diluted. And again, sort of placed it here at the bottom because it's kind of the reflection. You don't want it. You don't have too much. Just a little bit. Just to draw the eye to the fact that it's the reflection in front, and there's a bit of perspective here inside. So I'm going to leave the front. Only thing I feel like doing again, because I feel like my horizon needs a little bit more of a crisp edge. I'm just grabbing a little bit of blue paint here. And because it's still wet, it's going to blend in. So I'm just gently tapping the end of my flat brush on the horizon line like this, like that. And sort of flattening my brush so that the paint seeps into the wet part in front. There you are. I feel like my horizon line isn't straight. I don't know why. I might be making a correction here that I might regret afterwards. Let's see what happens. Feel, what do we think? Feels like it's going down a bit, but hey ho, I'm not sure. The best thing would be to grab my ruler, but obviously I don't want to make it. I think that's better. Right, got it. So so that's it really. I think we're done. And we've got our lighthouse. Right, so we're finished, and here is the lighthouse I composed today with you on the tutorial. This is the one I did as our reference card. So slightly different tones of blues and greys in the background, but you know, you just everybody's work is different, and from one week to another it's also a different complete project. So I hope it's given you some ideas on how to use your gouache paint, and you don't have to use it really thick. You can also, and opaque, you can also use it very diluted and create some lovely work in a watercolor style. Don't forget to share your photos of your finished work on our Facebook community page and on Instagram, and everybody encouraging each other, which has been absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you next time, where I'll be showing you how to do daffodils in a very different manner, and it'll be a little bit of a longer project. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.